Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the rain that may be falling outside your window. Let the real world blur slowly, like mist rolling over an ancient forest untouched for centuries. Take a deep breath and exhale gently, as if releasing 100 years of weariness from your body. Tonight, there is nothing you need to think about, nowhere you need to go, no voice you must answer but your own. We are going together to a time that was never recorded in textbooks, to a story that was never taught in school, and to a place that cannot be found on any map. We won't meet kings or mighty knights tonight. There will be no battles, no glory. Only a village that never wanted to be known, yet still exists as if refusing to be forgotten. That village has no official name. It is not written in any manuscript and was never noted by any who call themselves historians. But for those who live near the valley, they've known about it since childhood, even if none dare speak its name aloud. The village appears only when the storm arrives. Only when lightning slices through the sky and the rain crashes down with a fury held back for months. You may have heard legends about cursed places that vanish from the living world, but this one is quieter than any curse. It is not a tale of vengeance, but of estrangement. Of a community that faded slowly, not because of time, but because it was deliberately forgotten. Like an old stain, washed repeatedly to erase it from the fabric of history. Yet each time the sky turns violent and farmers rush back to their huts, there are always one or two who swear they saw lights in the distance. Lightning, not torches. Warm light glowing from windows that never appear on sunny days. Houses standing still on a hillside that's normally empty. The footpath leading to the village only appears when the rain is heavy enough to form flowing water. As if the world opens a secret door long shut through the dry season. We will go there tonight, not with feet, but with thought. Slowly, without sound, just by allowing yourself to drift along the loosened threads of time. Think of it as a dream arriving without invitation. Or think of it as waking up on the darkest night and something out there calling you not to frighten, but to share a memory that doesn't wish to be lost. Let's listen together. Imagine you are standing on the crest of a hill, in the middle of a night that hasn't yet decided to be truly still. The wind rolls in from the valley below, carrying the damp scent of earth and old leaves. Before you lies a stretch of green land, usually quiet, but now transformed into a stage of mystery. Heavy clouds hang low in the sky, and the first rumble from the heavens begins to echo faintly. Then lightning strikes. And the moment its light touches the valley, you see it. A village, not large, but complete. With straw-roofed houses, faint lanterns glowing behind fogged glass windows, and a thin mist floating between the stone-paved paths. The village seems to emerge from a fold in time. It's not on any map, and there's no road that leads there. But each time the lightning strikes, its shape returns. And once the final flash fades, there is nothing left, only wet grass and silence. No one claims to have built it. No local record mentions a settlement on that spot. The farmers living nearby refuse to speak of it. They shut their doors tightly when storms come, hanging old wool knots or carved crosses above their door frames. They believe the valley carries a kind of echo from the past, not just memory, but a kind of residue. They call it the Shadow Village, a place that appears only when the sky is angry enough to let it slip through. Some researchers tried to investigate. They brought geology tools and ground scanners, but found nothing. Stone foundations, no buried structures. And yet, from a distance, in the flashing light, the village is entirely visible. Some even say they hear faint sounds, like a spoon tapping against a clay bowl, or soft laughter behind a curtain. No one dares approach during a storm. Those who did either never returned or came back unable to speak. The village is not old in the usual sense. Nothing seems broken. Nothing looks decayed. But somehow, every detail makes your chest tighten, as if time there doesn't pass. Or perhaps moves too quickly, blurring everything. Some report seeing movement behind the windows. Someone sewing, an old man playing a flute, a dog sitting quietly by a door. But none of them seem aware they are being seen. They live in a different dimension. And perhaps they don't know they only exist during storms. They say the place once was real, but vanished. Burned, buried, or wiped away by a plague so swift that dawn arrived with no survivors. There are no graves, no churches, not even a marker stone. But the sky remembers, and storms, with their wild and unreasonable force, pull back the thin curtain between now and then. Every time the lightning strikes, you are reminded not all that's lost is dead. Some things only wait for the right night to come back. Just for a moment. Now you know why the villagers nearby always light fires when the sky grows dark. Not for warmth, but as a warning. Fire to mark the boundary between our place and theirs. Between what is real and what is almost real. Because something is there. Not ghosts, not legends, but a village, complete with its life, but only visible to those brave enough to stand in the storm, and quiet enough to listen to what no one wants to hear. You wake to a morning that isn't fully bright. The mist still clings low over the fields, and the world looks coated in a thin layer of ash. The walls of your shelter, whatever place you took refuge in last night, tremble faintly with the wind that hasn't truly stopped since the evening before. But when you open the door, the air outside feels unnaturally still. A silence not born of peace, but of something holding its breath behind the hedgerows, waiting for someone to move first. The ground remains damp, and the footprints you leave behind seem to vanish too quickly into the soil. There are no birds singing, no sound of carts or hooves, only your own footsteps, and even they sound too loud. If last night you saw the village from afar, this morning, strangely, you are already inside it. No transition, no warning. The thatched roofs now rise above your head. The tiny windows now sit beside you, fogged with dew that has yet to dry. A door stands slightly ajar, as if someone had just left it in a hurry. But there are no people, no animals, no smoke from the kitchens. Only objects abandoned in Medusa wooden cup, still half full of water. A damp cloth hanging from a beam. A dining table with an unfinished loaf of bread and an empty bowl. You walk the moss-covered cobblestone paths and realize this village is too detailed to be a hallucination. Every foundation stone, every rope not binding the roof, even the rust marks on the hinges there too precise. Nothing floats. Nothing shimmers. Nothing is transparent like a ghost. Yet still, this place doesn't feel alive. It feels like something holding its breath, hiding its heartbeat behind wood and stone. Then you notice something else. All the houses face the same direction. Not toward the morning sun, but toward the center of the village. A circular square, empty, except for a single ancient well. The well isn't deep, but as you approach, it feels like you're staring into a space without a bottom. The air around it is colder, and the wind sounds different here. You hear something inside the well. Not water, but footsteps. Slow footsteps. Then silence. Then whispers. Not in any language you understand, but close enough to make your skin prickle. You step back, slowly, but the world around you begins to shift. Buildings begin to show signs of age. Paint peels. Roofs sag. The mist, once at your knees, now rises to your waist, then chest. The wind returns, but not from the sky, from the houses. From behind doors that now begin to close themselves, quickly, slowly, as if you're being left behind or pushed out. And in the sky, the clouds begin to curl again, but this time, darker, as if the storm is returning from below. You realize this village may not just appear during storms. It may emerge searching for something or someone. Maybe this is not a shadow of the past, but a prison. A prison of time, of memory, of a curse too old to be named in any holy book. The people who once lived here didn't die. They were trapped in repetition, in silence, in a morning that never truly becomes noon. And now you're here, in the middle of a place that shouldn't exist, in a place you cannot find the same way twice. And deep inside the well, the footsteps begin again, and the night returned again. The clouds gathered like the hunched backs of ancient beasts, dragging themselves between sky and soil. The wind did not scream, nor did it howl. It only crept like someone who knows the way home in the dark, crawling over the grass and parting the veil of mist that hung like old spider webs. The thunder did not explode all at once, but crept in slowly, as if the earth itself was waking from a long sleep. When the first flash of lightning cracked through the hills, you saw it. Down below, the village was there again. No road ever leads to it. No footstep or wheel mark has ever approached or departed from it. But behind the veil of soft rain, small lights flickered in the windows of houses never visible in daylight. Smoke rose from chimneys that should have collapsed centuries ago. Someone was roasting something, perhaps bread, perhaps a kind of meat no longer recognized. On the main road, which was really just a path of old clay, someone walked slowly, their cloak long, unmoving, untouched by the wind, their face unseen. Only lightning reflected strange shadows upon the wet earth. A bell tolled once, then twice. The sound was not like metal, more like stone struck from deep inside a well. Then everything stopped. No movement, no sound. Even the rain froze in the air, and you realized the village was never waiting for you to arrive. It only appeared to be remembered by those who once lived and those who have not entirely gone. There is an old tale whispered between the damp pages of church manuscripts pages that stick together from moisture, about a village that appears only on certain nights when the sky splits with lightning. The story has no author, only copied again and again by different hands, always in fading ink, always in a script, never quite the same twice. In one version, the village was once inhabited by those who begged for mercy when the world was consumed by plague, but no city would take them. They built their own shelter deep in a valley, hoping that the heavens would listen better than men. They did not steal, did not fight. They simply vanished from history when the final fog closed them off from the eyes of the world. But stormy nights make everything a little visible again. There is another version, much darker, which claims the village was never abandoned because it never truly lived, that the houses were not built but grew from the ground like mushrooms under rotting wood, that the inhabitants never ate, never slept, only stood still each time the storm returned, staring toward anyone foolish enough to look for too long. You may have heard their voices. They say not human voices. More like the sound of water boiling with no fire or breath escaping lungs that no longer exist. Each generation has one person who sees the village, but no one has ever seen it twice. Imagine you are a small shepherd living in a year unrecorded by grand books, marked only by seasons that come and go without names. That year, the rains came too early, grass rotted in the fields, and your goats grew restless every night, as if they knew something they could not express. You lived in a wooden shack on the hillside, overlooking that valley, the one with no name, never mentioned in conversation except with a whispered breath. One night, awakened by lightning striking so close the ground trembled, you opened the small window covered by a torn cloth, and there, in a flash of light, you saw it. A row of small houses, too symmetrical for nature, too quiet for humans. Their roofs all tilted in the same direction as if bowed toward something unseen. A dirt path sliced through the valley like an unhealed wound, and at the end of it stood a tower that never existed in daylight. You closed your eyes in fear, and when you opened them again, everything was gone, but the fear remained. It settled in your chest, clung to your tongue, and made you never again refer to the valley as a place that could be seen. Your goats died 2 days later. No wounds, no sound. You asked nothing, not to the priest, not to your mother, because deep in your heart you knew the answer would not come from this world. The villagers who lived closest to the valley never spoke its name. They didn't mark it on the wooden map hanging in the little church, and children never played in its direction, as if some invisible line held their feet from stepping further. If you asked, they would only say it was empty land, though you knew from where you stood that its soil was rich, overgrown with wild plants that grew nowhere else. Yet no farmer dared to till it. No one planted or harvested there. Once a young man came from a neighboring village, carrying a hoe and the ambition to start a field of his own there. He laughed when the elders warned him, calling them cowards who believed in shadows. 2 weeks later, he was found sitting still in the middle of his unfinished field. eyes open, face pale, his body lifeless but not decayed. His tongue was gone, and in the dirt around him. The trail of his hoe stopped halfway as if someone or something had stopped him just before he touched something that should never be touched. Since that day, the villagers let the valley grow wild. They didn't cut its trees, didn't burn its grass, and never walked through it, even though the shortest road to town passed right through. Because even if none had seen it in daylight, they all knew. When lightning struck at night, small houses would appear through the mist, and something would move slowly among them. Something that did not want to be seen. Something that, if seen, would remain in memory, like a thorn that could never be pulled out. They say that if someone stands on the western slope of the valley during a stormy night and closes their eyes for a full 10 seconds, then opens them again as lightning flashes, they will see a cobbled path that was never there before. The path is narrow, framed by rotting wooden fences and lanterns that remain lit even under heavy rain. At the end of that path stands a small chapel with a pointed roof, its windows tightly shut and its door slightly ajar. There is no sound of bells, no light from within, but the smell of burning wax always carries far. Those who have smelled it reportedly dream of an old priest with a face black as coal, standing at an altar and reading from a book with no writing. His mouth moves, but no sound escapes. His congregation sits in silence, all lifeless, dressed in garments from a century never taught in school. The dream always unfolds the same way. The priest stops reading, turns his head left, then right, then looks directly at the dreamer, though you know it is only a dream. Your heart freezes as you realize his eyes are not looking into the dream world, but out into the place where you're sleeping. He is seeing outside, to where you lie. And you wake with the scent of wax still thick in the air, as if the valley itself had visited you. As if the boundary between time and the world had been folded by something not human. One night, many years ago, a hunter from the neighboring village lost his way in the storm. He had intended to find shelter under the trees, but the wind forced his path to veer toward the valley. He did not recall how he arrived there, only that the surroundings turned to thick fog, and the ground beneath his feet suddenly became stone. Then he saw the path, the lanterns glowing steadily in the rain, and the roof of the chapel like a black triangle amid the gray of night. He walked toward it. There were no night birds, no frogs, no crickets. He claimed to have seen shadows watching from the windows of the lined houses, but not a single soul stepped outside. When he reached the slightly open door of the chapel, the air around him turned colder, not like regular rain, but like the inside of an old cave. He touched the door and nudged it open. Inside the dim room, he saw rows of empty pews and candlelight that did not flicker. At the altar stood the old priest, exactly as in the tales. Their eyes met, and in an instant the hunter felt as if roots from beneath the floor were pulling at his body. He could not move, could not speak, and could only stare into the priest's eyes, which, like black glass, reflected his own face. But the face he saw was not his. He lost consciousness, and when he awoke, he was behind a bush far from the chapel. His clothes soaked through, and his palms bore burn-like scars. Since that day, he never returned to the valley, and he never hunted again. Some villagers call the place the Shadow of Valorin, though no map has ever recorded that name. It is a name passed only in whispers, inherited from one mouth to another without any written trace. No one knows who Valorin was, whether it was the name of a person or an old forgotten region. But if the storm is strong enough and the night dark enough, those who dare look toward the valley sometimes claim to see faint lights glowing through the mist. A few young ones have tried to descend, full of curiosity and pride, determined to prove the story was nothing but myth. Yet they always return before midnight, trembling, confused, and unwilling to explain anything. One of them lost his hearing for 3 days. Another confessed to waking up every night in a dream, standing inside that old chapel, seeing empty pews and hearing singing from a space that could not be seen. Some say it's all a product of fear, of suggestion born from old stories. But the chill sharp enough to reach the marrow never truly fades from their memory. Even years later, those who have seen the valley under stormy skies fall silent whenever the topic arises. Some choose to leave the village, some never marry, as if one rainy night is enough to change the course of a life. Carrying the weight of a place never officially acknowledged to exist. The village that appears never makes a sound. No creaking doors, no crowing roosters, no songs or calls of people. Only pale yellow light from dim windows, flickering as if stirred by an unfelt wind. And within the mist, the buildings stand upright, yet appear as if made of ash. Their beams seem brittle, the roofs lean, and the windows seem to stare directly at anyone watching. There is no movement, yet some swear they see silhouettes behind curtains, shadows that move slowly, as if someone is standing and observing from inside. Never more than one. Never the sound of footsteps or a door opening. Only silence and storm. Always the storm. When lightning flashes, for a moment, everything becomes clearer. The church at the center, the well beside the largest house, and a stone pillar standing alone in an open field. Covered in strange symbols, even the scholars from the city could not decipher. They tried to excavate once, on a bright summer day, but nothing was found. No trace of foundations, no remnants of fire, no bones. As if the village had never existed on this land. Yet still, on certain stormy nights, it returns, in the same shape, with windows that seem to wait for someone to come home. Some villagers in the surrounding areas have developed a strange habit. They never look directly toward the valley when a storm approaches. As if there's a silent agreement not to acknowledge the existence of the village. Windows are shut tightly, lights are turned off, and everyone stays quiet inside. No prayers, no conversations. As if an old understanding persists, that watching too long invites something that does not wish to be known. In the old diary kept by an aged priest in the monastery to the north, there are entries about houses without roots and faces that do not echo. He wrote of stormy nights when the church bell rang by itself without cause and livestock screamed in silence. When lightning swept across the valley, he claimed to have seen someone standing atop the stone pillar, unmoving, not raising a hand, simply standing as if waiting. The figure had no face, just a dark shape like compressed fog. The priest stopped writing a few months after. His pages are empty, as if his hand could no longer describe whatever came after. No explanation, no warning. Just emptiness, and then no word from him again. That monastery is now empty, covered in moss, okay? And on certain nights, a faint light can be seen through its windows. What makes the place so disturbing is not the apparition or the lightning flashes. It's the regularity. Its appearance is never random, but always follows a certain pattern. Every 49 days. When the moon is covered by clouds and the wind blows from the east, the oldest villagers know how to count it, though they never speak of it. An old widow once whispered that it's not a ghost village, but a reflection. A reflection of a place that once truly existed, but not in this world. That those buildings are remnants of a place pulled out of time and trapped between seasons. That its people are not dead, but still alive, waiting for this world to open just wide enough for them to return. But only if someone calls. Only if someone watches for too long. So windows are closed, and children are taught not to look. In modern researchers' observations, each appearance brings a subtle change to the vegetation in that valley. The grass turns darker. Roots push upward from the ground, as if trying to flee. Birds avoid flying over it. And once, an old dog wandered in during a stormy night and returned the next morning with fully white eyes, a rigid tongue, and a body that trembled until it died. Since then, no one has tried to enter again. Even adventurers choose to stay away. Something about the place makes time feel heavy. And the wind, if you get close enough, carries not just the storm's howl, but whispers in a language no one can understand, yet it feels as if it's speaking only to you. Imagine standing at the edge of that cliff on a stormy night. The wind strikes your face, cold and dense like ocean fog, and from afar you see a faint light glowing behind the dark clouds. The village appears slowly, like a painting drawn by lightning. The rooftops gleam briefly, then vanish back into the dark. There's a sound, not a scream, not a howl, but like a chorus of people singing from beneath layers of rain. The song is neither joyful nor mournful, but flat, like a prayer repeated with no hope of being answered. You know you should leave, but as with many things that defy reason, your body stays in place, your eyes unwilling to turn away. You feel something watching back, and when lightning strikes closer, you see shadows in the windows of the houses. Not just the shadows of things, but silhouettes of people, standing still, watching as if waiting for you. Some say it's just a trick of the light. Others believe it's an invitation to come closer, to step across the blurred threshold between the world we know and something older, something quieter. Something that never really left, only waited for the right moment to reappear. With every appearance, the number of buildings in that village increases by one. No one knows why, but a theory circulates in whispers that each time someone stares too long, the village records their face, and when the next storm night arrives, a new house is built to shelter one more resident who cannot return. The next morning, when the sun rises behind the mist and dew clings to the tips of grass, the village vanishes. No trace of fire, no rubble remains, only the damp valley soil, just as it always was. But one thing has changed. The path you walked last night now forks. A trail leads to the direction you know. The other, winding down into the valley, leads to the spot where the village had stood. No signposts, no logical reason. The new trail simply appears. The soil is fresh, faint small footprints visible, like those of children walking neatly toward school. But that school doesn't exist. It never has. When villagers from surrounding areas attempt to follow the path, they return with different stories. One claims to have seen wheat fields that were never planted. Another swears he passed a stone well that made sounds like breathing. None of them reach the same place, as if the road changes for each who enters, offering a different version of the forgotten valley. An old monk once wrote in his manuscript that such paths are thin doors, spiritual gateways that open only when a person's intent is unclear, when curiosity overpowers fear. And perhaps, as in many old stories, the path is not just made of dirt and stone, but also memory and guilt. For those who walk it too often begin to forget their way home. They start sleeping in the valley, making fires, hearing voices, until one stormy night comes and they never return. And the following week, one more house appears in the village, faintly visible only when lightning strikes. People began giving the place a name, though none ever made it onto a map. Some called it Mist Hamlet because it appeared only when fog and storm merged. Others called it Echo Village because every word you speak there supposedly answers back, even when no one is near. But the name whispered most often, not spoken aloud, Shadow Village. It's not official, but it lingers, passed from mouth to mouth, carried by nighttime stories and unfinished nightmares. Explorers started arriving, drawn by the strange tales of a village invisible by day. Some brought cameras, others tracking dogs, but none returned with solid proof. Their video footage was blurry, compasses spun without direction. Laughter of children echoed with no bodies to match. A dog once returned, but never calmed. It barked at the night sky whenever thunder rumbled in the distance. An owl once flew through the village and dropped lifeless to the ground, as if struck by something unseen. An old archaeologist once wrote that the village might be a reflection of something lost, a kind of echo from another reality pulsing in sync with storms. Perhaps there once was a settlement here. Maybe a fire or plague wiped it clean, leaving behind some spiritual residue that time could not erase. But if that's true, why do the houses keep increasing? Not everyone who enters the village returns. That's the sentence most often found in the margins of old books, in the journals of travelers, or faintly carved into the trunks of trees near the valley's edge. Sometimes, names remain in the tags of backpacks found abandoned in the wet grass. One message, scrawled hastily on a torn scrap of cloth, read, "I saw them, but they didn't see me." No explanation was given for who they were. Survivors, when there are any, often return disoriented. A teenage boy missing for 2 days was found sitting cross-legged at the cliff's edge, eyes vacant, staring into a storm that had already passed. He spoke softly, as if reciting from an ancient manuscript, saying that time doesn't move forward in that place. There was a house that split itself in two, staircase that only went up but brought people down, and a mother's voice behind a door, even though his mother had died years ago. People in the nearby towns began to avoid the place whenever the sky grew gray. Even their children were taught early on never to say the village's name out loud. Some elders hung hawthorn branches and old prayer beads by their windows, hoping lightning wouldn't carry the village's shadow closer. But every rainy season, one or two souls can't resist their curiosity, and the storm, as if it understands, arrives sooner than expected. Imagine standing on a village road that doesn't exist on any map. Its earth soaked with rain, and the air thick with the scent of iron, like blood that has only just dried. The houses on either side appear whole, yet their windows are vacant like eye sockets that once held light but now reflect nothing. There are no birdsong, no buzzing insects. Not even the wind seems willing to move too quickly. You walk slowly along the path that refuses to be straight, as if the ground decides its own shape. In the distance, a wooden gate creaks open gently, though no soul is seen. Inside a house whose door sways lazily in the breeze, you find plates still arranged on the table, and a single cup holding water that has not yet evaporated. A faint smell of burnt wood lingers, though there is no trace of fire. On a shelf, dusty books lie open, all on pages bearing the same date, the night the first great storm arrived. Clocks throughout the home are frozen at midnight. No footsteps, no breath besides your own. You notice even your reflection does not appear in the old mirrors hanging on the walls. And perhaps it's by precisely this silence that makes the village feel like a place waiting for something unfinished. And maybe, as you stand in the middle of that road, with the rain easing and the sky growing pale, you realize you are no longer a visitor. You are part of the village now. The next morning, if time still moves in this village, you realize the ground beneath your feet is no longer muddy. Fine grass begins to grow, but its color is paler than usual. A green that feels uncertain, as if sprouting from memory, not from roots. Morning fog drapes the village like a dusty old blanket, dulling the sunlight that should pierce the cracks in the rooftops. But there is no sunlight here, only the slow swirl of ash-colored reflections in the air. You pass an old well, whose water reflects the houses around it, but not you. Then you see something that should not be there. A small pair of sandals, wet, left at the edge of the path. No other footprints nearby. No laughter of children. Then, from far away, a song a child's tune sung far too slowly, like a warped cassette tape played underwater. The voice doesn't come closer, but it doesn't fade either. It just fills the air, like breath. You decide to sit on the front step of a house whose door is open and watch the sky that refuses to change. The wind blows a little stronger, bringing with it the scent of wilted roses and extinguished candles. In the corner of the house, a black cat watches you without blinking. You blink, and it is gone. Are you dreaming? Is this part of the storm? Or has the storm carried you to a place outside time, you're not sure. But one thing is certain. This village is not empty. It is simply waiting for someone patient enough to listen. That evening, the fog begins to lift, and the village appears more real. Yet there is something that remains unseen, like shadows that fade when you try to look too closely. You walk along the cobblestone path, which once seemed disordered, but now feels as if it was carved by unseen hands. By the side of the road, a large tree stands tall, yet no leaves cling to its branches. The branches bend, as if reaching for the sky, and between the gaps, you see something moving, something you cannot touch. As you approach, you notice large stones stacked in a pattern beneath the tree that seems unnatural. They form a circle, perfect in its imperfection. The stones are covered with thick green moss, and in the center of the circle, there is a small object made of metal, something far too old to be recognized by anyone. When you reach for it, the atmosphere around you falls silent, as if time itself slows. There is no sound, no wind, no shadows. And when you grasp the object, you feel as though the world around you begins to distort. Like looking through a cracked glass, the object is a key, small yet incredibly heavy in your hand. This key is not for a door, nor for a coffin, but for something much older. Something that has been hidden for centuries, covered by time. But with this key, perhaps you will find the answer. Only to turn the key, you must be ready to face what lies behind it. You walk back down the same road, but the village no longer looks the same. Houses have shifted positions. Windows once closed are now open. And behind the tattered curtains, old eyes peer without blinking. There are no footsteps, yet you feel watched. Everything remains silent except for your own heartbeat pounding too loudly in your chest. The sky begins to change color, from gray to deep blue, then a dense purple, until everything seems like a night that refuses to fully arrive. You pass the same old well, but now its water no longer reflects your face-only blackness. Something has been opened in this village, and perhaps you are the one who did it. In the distance, a bell rings not from the church. The sound is heavy, as if coming from beneath the ground. Each chime makes the earth beneath your feet tremble slightly, like the breath of something ancient. When you turn around, there is no longer a way out. The forest that once allowed a path now forms a wall of dark trees, grown tight and cold. The only way is into the heart of the village. You know the answer may be there, but within you, a strange feeling begins to grow. Not fear, not anxiety, but a quiet acknowledgement that you've been here before. Not in a dream, not in history, but in something deeper than memory. The village center is no longer an open field as before. Its ground is lower than the rest, forming a narrow depression like a giant bowl made of mud. Around it stand wooden pillars, broken at the top, as if they once held something unbearably heavy. Some of them are wrapped in rotting ropes, hanging without direction. At the bottom of the pit, you see remnants of a fire that never dies, not red flames, but bluish fire that flickers slowly, producing almost no heat. That fire burns right at the center, casting faint light onto stone faces half buried around its edge. These faces are not statues. They bear scars, missing teeth, eyes that are hollow yet alive, and they all face one direction award where you now stand. There is no sound, only the hush of wind that feels like a whisper. Then suddenly, from beneath the ground, a thin hand like a twig reaches out, grasping at the air as if searching for support. Behind you, a door creaks open slowly, though no house is near. Every step forward feels heavy, as if you're no longer a visitor, but a part of the village's story itself. You begin to understand this village doesn't appear on stormy nights merely to be seen. It appears because something remains unresolved, because something is yet to be remembered. And you, somehow, carry the key to unlock it all. But that key is not in your hand. It lies in a memory not yet awakened, in something buried not by time, but by the will to forget. As you walk further into the hollow circle, the ground begins to feel sticky and deep. Every step sinks downward, as if the mud is trying to hold you not as a guest, but as part of itself. Around you, the buried stone faces seem to shift slowly, not changing place, but frowning, sighing, or narrowing their deep-set eyes. They do not speak, but in their silence there is judgment, something ancient and profound, like being watched by the memory of the earth itself. The wind now blows from the opposite direction, carrying the scent of rusted iron and the first rain. In the distance, thunder rumbles again, but not from the sky. The sound comes from underground. You begin to realize that every thunderclap you heard earlier wasn't the sky's fury, but the land's lament. The lightning flashes did more than light up the village, they awakened it. At the center of the pit, you find a strange object almost completely buried. An old metal helmet covered in scratches and fractures, bearing a symbol long erased. As you touch it, the rumble from the ground intensifies, and the earth itself pulses like a chest, struggling to recall its final breath. In an instant, the entire valley feels like a single living being trying to stir awake. You glance toward the village exit, but now there is only fog and shadow. No way back. You are not dreaming, and this village is no myth. It is real because you touched it, because on this stormy night you came when no one was supposed to. And now the village knows you are here. You begin to walk backward, slowly, but each step feels heavy, like pulling yourself out from the embrace of something unwilling to let go. The ground beneath your feet seems to shift, not to swallow you, but to adjust to mold itself to your shape. Around you, the mist begins to fall again, thicker than before, covering the sky and land until only the faint contours of houses remain. They now appear different. Roofs that were once curved and wooden now resemble folded wings. Windows gape not like openings, but like vacant eyes. Some walls cave inward, revealing interiors that resemble the exposed stomachs of silent creatures. In the distance, you see the silhouette of a woman standing still, her face hidden beneath a hood, her body rigid. Yet her fingers move as if feeling something in the air. She does not greet you, but there is a pull, invisible, in her direction. Behind her, the door of a house slowly opens on its own. The wind no longer blows. No animals cry. Even the sound of your footsteps is muffled by something unexplainable. As if this village has folded itself shut like the petals of night, leaving only the awareness that you are in the middle of something older than time. A ritual without a priest. A warning without words. You no longer wish to know, but your curiosity has brought you this far. And this village, which appears only during storms, is not just a place. It is a mirror of something history has forgotten, shadow of the past that has never rested. And now you are part of that memory, like footprints that will never be erased. Your steps finally stop at the edge of the village, where the ground begins to slope down into the valley. Below, the misty forest appears calm. But you know, after all that has happened, that the stillness is not a sign of peace. Behind you, the village remains silent, neither inviting you back nor allowing you to truly leave. There is a pressure at the nape of your neck, like a warm breath from no one. Yet you choose to keep walking. Your legs feel heavy, not from fatigue, but because the land does not truly want to release you. The descending path feels soft underfoot, yet leaves no mud on your skin. The air grows denser, something you must part with your chest just to breathe. Then, through a slit in the fog, you hear a sound. Not words, not a scream, but a faint clinking like metal tools gently striking, rhythmic, unhurried. As if the village, though now out of sight, is still working, continuing something. Perhaps building, perhaps dismantling. You don't know. But the sound, for some reason, tells you the place was never truly empty. Even when the storm has passed and the night has grown late, you look up at the sky and realize the lightning has stopped. The sky is still gray, but without flashes. The wind begins to brush your skin. The world begins to return. But that village, with its narrow paths, bowed rooftops, and nameless residents, still clings behind your eyes, like a stain you cannot see. And you ask yourself whether you've truly walked away, or simply wandered deeper in. In the nearest town, as the sky clears and the fields glow with green, some townsfolk gather at the old tavern. Speaking of ordinary things, the price of wheat, children learning to read, the coming harvest. But when the wind suddenly carries a scent of wet soil, and an odd hush creeps between their conversations, someone asks in a soft voice, "Have you ever heard of that village? The one not on any map? The one that appears only when the storm rolls in?" For a moment, everyone falls silent, as if they had erased that topic from their memory. Like a stain scrubbed from a page meant to remain white. But someone nods, then another. Old stories float through the air like mist that never truly disappears. One says their father once saw lightning strike the valley and spotted the shadow of small rooftops in the distance. Another swears they once helped a soaked traveler who appeared out of nowhere, eyes hollow like someone waking from a restless dream. But none ever returned. None could point to a clear direction. The village remains rumor, a soft legend, like a low note in a song you only hear if you're truly quiet. Yet every time a storm gathers in the sky and lightning kisses the earth with its rage, a few people instinctively glance toward the valley, holding their breath. And perhaps, in a fleeting moment beyond explanation, they see something, a light, a shape, or merely a strange feeling that beyond that mist, there is another world waiting, either to be remembered or to forget you. The following nights always return to stillness. No sound but crickets and the breeze threading through trees. Yet in the dreams of some, the shadow of that village returns. They stand on cobbled streets they've never walked while awake, staring at houses with dark windows and doors slightly ajar, as if awaiting something to step inside. In the corner of the dream, a bell rings. Not the kind that calls for prayer, but more like the chime of time already past. Their footsteps carry them down narrow alleys, and at every turn, faces emerge. But no one speaks. Only eyes watching calmly, as though they've long known this visitor would arrive. There is no fear, but neither is there warmth. Just a long pause between one breath and the next, as if that world had no use for words. Some dream of becoming part of that village, living in rhythm with fog and storm. Others awaken in cold sweat, certain that if they fall asleep again, they won't return as the same person. And when morning arrives, the sky looks clearer than usual. But some begin sleeping with candles lit, not because they fear the dark, but because they fear being seen by something through it. Now, the shadow of that village lives as a story only whispered. Never written, never sent in letters, never marked on official maps. Children hear it from grandparents who speak softly when the rain comes, as if the tale must only be told when the sky is wet. Outsiders dismiss it as legend, a fairy tale from a time better forgotten. But to those who've seen lightning strike the valley and reflect off small rooftops in the distance, it's no tale. They know not every place needs explanation, not every history should be unearthed. And perhaps there should be a village that appears only during storms, when the world grows dark enough to reveal what can't be seen in daylight. Because within folds of time and mist, there are spaces where the past never truly left, only waiting for its moment to surface again, like a shadow that arrives when the light flickers. So, if one night a storm comes and the sky seems to open, don't close your window too quickly. Watch the valley that normally appears empty. Sometimes, in just a second, you might see thatched roofs and stone paths. And if you do, stay still. Don't let it know you've noticed. Because the village is looking back,